When I got my tracheostomy tube in May 2017, I knew very little about tracheostomy tubes. Almost everything I have learned has been from trial and error. Here are 15 things I wish I would have been told after getting my tracheostomy tube. After getting a tracheostomy tube, it is imperative to get a list of people who can be called in case questions arise or if there are any concerns. Create a list of who can be called and when they can be contacted. Many clinics are only open until 5 p.m. If a concern comes up after 5 p.m., find out if there's an on-call medical provider who can be contacted. If a person is also using a ventilator with the tracheostomy tube, the person should have a respiratory therapist. Find out the respiratory therapist's office hours. Inquire who can be called if the respiratory therapist is not available. If an urgent concern arises and you cannot get in contact with anyone, please go to the emergency department. The emergency department has respiratory therapists on staff. A respiratory therapist can troubleshoot your question or concern and can let you know if it is something which needs immediate medical intervention or if the issue is not an emergency. When getting a tracheostomy tube, it can be easy to misplace items. I find it is best if all tracheostomy tube supplies are kept together in case an emergency arises. After getting a tracheostomy tube, there will be a lot of mucus. Over time, the amount of mucus will decrease. Always have tissue or napkins available in case mucus flies out of the tracheostomy tube. Having a tracheostomy tube means air is entering and exiting the respiratory tract via a hole in the neck. The normal way in which air is warmed and hydrated by the nose and mouth is bypassed. This means the air which is inhaled is very cold and dry. The cold, dry air will quickly dry out the respiratory tract. This can lead to mucus plugs and blood clots. Please do everything you can to keep your airways hydrated. Drink lots of fluids. Use a cool mist humidifier or heated humidifier as much as you can. If possible, cover the tracheostomy tube with a heat and moisture exchanger when not using a humidifier. Keeping the airways moist will prevent mucus plugging the tracheostomy tube. After getting a tracheostomy tube, I was told the only way to clear mucus from the tracheostomy tube was by using a suction machine. After doing research, I discovered running 5 milliliters of saline 1 to 2 times a day through a nebulizer broke up mucus and greatly lessened the amount of suctioning I needed. Even though I use a heated humidifier all night and for most of the day, mucus is a big problem for me. However, if I run 5 milliliters of saline through the nebulizer 1 to 2 times a day, I have had almost zero mucus plugs in my tracheostomy tube. The only times I've had mucus plugs were in the hospital when I was unable to run saline through a nebulizer. After getting a tracheostomy tube, become acquainted with your sputum. For your information, sputum is another name for mucus. Many medical providers use the word sputum when referring to mucus in the tracheostomy tube. Know the sputum's normal color and consistency. If the color, consistency, or amount of sputum changes, please seek medical attention. When sputum changes, this often indicates there may be an infection. If an infection is suspected, please have your sputum cultured. People with tracheostomy tubes often acquire unusual bacterial infections. The bacteria are often resistant to common antibiotics and require special medicine. If a sputum culture is not requested, the proper antibiotics may not be administered. One would think going to a hospital, they would have all the supplies you need for your tracheostomy tube. However, I have found over and over again the hospital often does not have the supplies I need. When I go to the hospital, I bring along a bag filled with supplies such as a spare tracheostomy tube and tubing for my ventilator. Everyone who has a tracheostomy tube should have an ambu bag. An ambu bag is also called a resuscitation bag. If a ventilator fails, an ambu bag can be used to manually ventilate the person. Additionally, an ambu bag is vital for CPR in people who have a tracheostomy tube. Please request an ambu bag from the hospital before being released home from the hospital with your tracheostomy tube. I wish I could say all medical providers have knowledge about tracheostomy tubes, but this has not been my experience. Most doctors are clueless about tracheostomy tubes, and many become panicked when they see I have a tracheostomy tube. If a medical provider is not comfortable administering care because you have a tracheostomy tube, please find a different provider. If you have a tracheostomy tube, the most frequently suggested doctor to see is an ear, nose, and throat doctor, which is often abbreviated as ENT. If you have a ventilator and tracheostomy tube, the best doctor is a pulmonologist who specializes in critical care. Critical care doctors are doctors who work in the intensive care unit. They usually have a lot of experience with tracheostomy tubes and ventilators. A point of clarification: regular pulmonologists generally have little knowledge about tracheostomy tubes and ventilators. Please avoid people who are sick or who are coughing or sneezing. Having a tracheostomy tube means you are now immunocompromised. If someone is sick, it is much more likely you will get sick. People love to tell me they are just sick with allergies and they are not contagious. I cannot tell you how many times someone's allergies may be sick with a respiratory infection. When inserting a tracheostomy tube, always use lubricant jelly and an obturator. If you do not use these items, the tracheostomy tube will get stuck while being inserted. This will cause pain and may damage the trachea. A small piece of plastic included with the tracheostomy tube is called an obturator. This is needed to insert the tracheostomy tube. Please always carry an extra obturator with you at all times. If the tracheostomy tube falls out, an obturator will be needed to reinsert the tracheostomy tube. Also, if the tracheostomy tube becomes clogged with mucus, the tracheostomy tube can be removed and the obturator can be used to clear the tracheostomy tube of mucus. Once the mucus is out of the tracheostomy tube, the obturator can be used to reinsert the tracheostomy tube. Thank you so much for joining me. Please remember to like and subscribe down below. I hope you have a great day and a wonderful week. Bye-bye!